The billionaire's train was not supposed to stop there for long. It was just a delay, a small interruption in a life that had become perfectly controlled, perfectly timed, and carefully guarded from inconvenience. But sometimes, life does not ask for permission before changing everything. Victor Hale stood near the large glass window of the crowded train station, his reflection staring back at him. The expensive suit, the calm posture, the quiet authority in his eyes, all signs of a man who had conquered the world. Yet behind that reflection, hidden deep, was a boy who once had nothing. The station was loud, alive, messy. People rushed in every direction, dragging bags, arguing, laughing, shouting. The smell of food mixed with dust and sweat filled the air. It was the kind of place Victor had not stepped in for years. But this place, this exact place, it was where everything started. He remembered the cold nights on wooden benches, the hunger that twisted his stomach until it hurt to breathe, the days he sold newspapers, calling out headlines he didn't even understand, just to earn a few coins. And in those dark days, there was one light, Lena. He closed his eyes for a second, her name echoing in his mind like a memory that refused to fade. The girl who shared her food when she barely had enough. The girl who laughed even when life gave her nothing to laugh about. The girl who believed in him when he was just a poor boy with impossible dreams. Victor checked his watch. The train would take time. Waiting was not something he was used to anymore. His life moved fast, decisions made in seconds, time worth more than gold. He exhaled slowly and turned away from the window. "I need coffee," he murmured to himself, more out of habit than desire. He walked toward a small restaurant inside the station. It looked old, simple, almost forgotten. Plastic chairs, worn-out tables, a counter that had seen years of use. Nothing about it matched his world anymore. He stepped inside anyway. The moment he entered, no one paid attention to him. That was rare. In his world, people noticed him immediately. Here, he was just another man waiting for a train. Victor ordered a coffee and stepped aside, his mind wandering. He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't expecting anything. But then something pulled his attention. A small movement behind the counter. A woman stood at the sink, washing dishes. Her hands moved quickly, dipping plates into soapy water, scrubbing, rinsing, slacking. Her posture was slightly bent, like life had placed a weight on her shoulders that she could not put down. Victor frowned slightly. Something felt familiar. He watched her for a moment longer. The way she pushed her hair back using her wrist. The way she hummed softly, almost unconsciously. The quiet strength in her tired movements. His heartbeat slowed, then suddenly picked up. "No," he whispered under his breath. It couldn't be. He took a step closer. The world around him began to fade. The noise of the station became distant, like it was happening far away. The woman lifted her head. Their eyes met, and time stopped. Those eyes, those same eyes, soft, deep, full of something that had once been hope, now mixed with exhaustion. Victor's breath caught in his chest. "Lena," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The plate slipped from her hands, crashing into the sink with a loud splash. Water spilled over, but she didn't move. She stared at him. Her lips trembled. "Victor," she breathed. In that moment, years disappeared. The distance between wealth and poverty vanished. The billionaire and the dishwasher were gone. There were only two children again. The boy who dreamed of escaping, and the girl who believed he could. Victor stepped forward, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. "I thought I would never see you again," he said, his voice unsteady. Lena quickly wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly aware of herself. Her clothes, her position, the soap on her skin. Embarrassment rushed through her like heat. I didn't know it was you," she said softly, her eyes lowering for a moment. Victor looked at her carefully. Life had not been kind. She looked older than she should, thinner. There were small lines near her eyes that told stories of struggle, not age. But her eyes, they were still hers, still Lena. "I searched for you," Victor said quietly. Lena looked up, surprised. "You did?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. Victor nodded slowly. "Years ago, I came back, I asked people. But no one knew where you went." Lena swallowed hard, emotions rising in her chest. "I thought you forgot," she admitted. Victor shook his head immediately. "Never." A loud voice interrupted them. Lena, what are you doing? Plates are piling up. She flinched slightly. Reality came rushing back. I'm sorry, she said quickly, stepping back. I have to work. Victor felt something tighten inside him. No, wait, he said almost urgently. Please. Just 5 minutes. Lena hesitated. She looked toward the kitchen, then back at him. Fear was clear in her eyes. Not fear of him, but fear of losing what little stability she had. Victor softened his voice. Please, he said. A's my friend. That word friend hit her deeply. She nodded slowly. They moved to a small corner table, away from the noise. Victor sat across from her, suddenly unsure of himself. This was strange. He had faced powerful people, made billion-dollar decisions without hesitation. But now, sitting in front of Lena, he felt like that same poor boy again. Is it really you? Lena asked again, like she still couldn't believe it. It's me, he replied gently. She let out a small breath, her fingers tightening around her apron. I saw your face once, she said quietly. On a big billboard. Your name, Victor Hale. People were taking pictures. Victor looked down briefly. And I thought, she continued, her voice breaking slightly, that couldn't be the same boy I knew. Victor looked back at her, his eyes serious. It is, he said. Silence filled the space between them for a moment. Then Victor asked the question that had already begun to haunt him. What happened to you, Lena? Her expression changed instantly. Pain. Deep, quiet pain. She looked down at her hands, gathering strength. My mother got sick, she began slowly. Not long after you left. I tried to work and study at the same time, but it wasn't enough. Victor leaned forward slightly, listening carefully. My father, she continued, her voice softer now. I tried. But one night he didn't come home. Victor's heart tightened. There was an accident, she said. A truck hit the bus he was in. Victor closed his eyes briefly. He didn't survive. Lena's voice didn't break. That was the hardest part. It meant she had already cried all her tears long ago. After that, everything fell apart, she continued. My mother got worse. I sold everything. I borrowed money. I begged. She paused, swallowing hard. But she died too. Victor felt his hands curl into fists under the table. I was alone, Lena said. Still a teenager. She let out a slow breath. I tried to keep going. I remembered my dream, becoming a teacher. Victor nodded, remembering clearly. You used to teach kids here, he said softly, with chalk on the wall. A small smile appeared on her face, then disappeared just as quickly. Dreams don't feed you, she said quietly. Dreams don't pay rent. Victor looked at her, his chest heavy. So I worked, she continued. Anywhere. Cleaning, carrying, serving. Some people were kind, most were not. Her voice dropped lower. Sometimes I went to sleep hungry. Victor felt something shift inside him. Something deeper than sympathy. Something personal. And now this job, he asked gently. Lena looked around briefly. It's not much, she admitted, but it's stable. And I can't afford to lose it. Victor stared at her. The girl who once shared her food with him was now barely surviving, and in that moment something inside him made a decision. Not out of pity, not out of charity, but out of something much stronger, a promise. Lena, he said slowly, his voice firm but calm. She looked at him. This is not where your story ends. She shook her head immediately, fear rising. Please don't say things like that, she whispered. I've heard promises before. Victor leaned slightly forward. I am not them, he said. Their eyes locked. And for the first time, Lena felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Hope, but she didn't know yet that this moment, this simple meeting in a small station restaurant, was about to change her life forever. And what Victor was about to do next would shock not just her, but the entire city. Victor held her gaze for a few seconds longer, as if he was trying to make her believe something she had stopped believing in a long time ago. Around them, the station noise returned slowly, like the world was reminding them that life had not paused just because they met again. Lena shifted slightly in her seat, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the table. Victor, she said softly, you don't understand. People like me, we don't get second chances like that. Victor didn't answer immediately. He simply watched her carefully, like he was studying every line on her face, every hidden story behind her silence. "I do understand," he finally said, "because I was exactly where you are." Lena shook her head again, but this time it was weaker, like her own argument was not convincing her anymore. "You left," she said quietly. "You found a way out. I stayed, and life didn't give me that chance." Victor leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly. "It didn't give me anything either," he said. "I took it, piece by piece, fight by fight." Lena looked at him again, her eyes searching his face. There was no arrogance in his voice, no pride, just truth. "But not everyone wins that fight," she whispered. Victor nodded once. "You're right," he said. "Not everyone does." A brief silence followed. Then he leaned forward again, his voice softer now. "But some people deserve another chance," he added. "And when life refuses to give it, someone else should." Lena's heart skipped slightly at those words, but fear quickly followed. She had lived too long in disappointment to trust hope so easily. "Victor," she began, but before she could finish, a loud voice from the kitchen cut through the moment again. "Lena! Are you planning to sit there all day?" Her body stiffened instantly. "I have to go," she said quickly, standing up. Victor stood up as well, faster than her. "Wait," he said. She looked at him, her eyes filled with worry now. "I'll lose my job," she said. Victor paused for a second. He understood that fear. It was not just about the job. It was about survival, instead of reaching into his pocket like most rich people would do. Instead of offering money like a quick solution, he chose something different. "Come with me," he said calmly. Lena blinked. "What?" "Just for 1 hour," he added. "Not as a worker. Not as someone in need. Just as Lena, my friend." She stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "I can't," she said. "You don't understand how this works. If I leave without permission—" "I do understand," Victor interrupted gently. "Because I used to stand where you stand." His words landed differently this time. Lena hesitated. Her eyes moved toward the kitchen again. Then back to Victor. There was something in his face, not pressure, not control. Just sincerity. "Please," he said quietly. "Don't let this moment disappear again." Her chest tightened. For years she had learned to ignore moments like this, to walk away, to choose safety over possibility. But this time felt different. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She swallowed hard. 1 hour, she whispered. Victor gave a small nod, relief passing through his expression. 1 hour, he agreed. They walked out of the restaurant together. The moment Lena stepped outside, the cool air hit her face. She felt strange, like she had stepped out of her life and into someone else's. Victor walked beside her calmly. People started noticing him now. Some whispered. Some stared. Lena noticed the way people moved aside slightly as he passed. It made her uncomfortable. Then she saw them, men in suits, standing at a distance, watching closely. Her step slowed. "Victor," she whispered. "Those people. They're my security," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "Security," she repeated softly. Victor nodded. "They follow me everywhere." Lena didn't know what to say. She just kept walking, her heart beating faster. They reached a sleek black car parked near the entrance. The driver immediately stepped out and opened the door. Lena froze. "I've never," she began, then stopped, embarrassed. Victor didn't rush her. He simply held the door open. "Then today is your first time," he said gently. She stepped in slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of doing something wrong. Victor followed and the door closed quietly. Inside, everything was calm. Clean, expensive. Lena sat stiffly, her hands resting tightly on her lap. Victor noticed. "You can relax," he said softly. "You're safe," that word again. Safe, it echoed in her mind in a way that made her chest feel heavy. The car started moving. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Lena stared out of the window, watching the city pass by. People walking. Shops. Life. It all looked the same, yet suddenly distant. "Where do you live?" Victor asked. Lena hesitated. "It's not a place you'd want to see," she said quietly. "I didn't ask to judge it," Victor replied. "I asked because I care." She looked down. "I rent a small room behind a shop," she admitted. "The roof leaks when it rains. The bathroom is outside." Victor didn't interrupt. "Sometimes the ground floods," she added. "And food. he asked gently. She forced a small smile. I manage. Victor didn't respond immediately. He turned his gaze toward the window, but his mind was far away. I remember those days, he said quietly. When you learn how to pretend you're not hungry. Lena looked at him then. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw the boy she once knew. You said you would escape, she whispered. Victor nodded. And you were the reason I didn't give up, he said. Her eyes filled slightly, but she quickly looked away. The car slowed down and stopped in front of a tall, beautiful hotel. Lena's breath caught. Victor, why are we here? She asked. We need somewhere quiet, he said. Somewhere you can breathe. Before she could protest, he stepped out and offered his hand. After a moment of hesitation, she took it. Inside, everything felt unreal. Soft lights, calm floors, calm silence. People greeted Victor with respect. Welcome back, Mr. Hale. Lena felt smaller with every step. They entered a private lounge. Victor ordered water and food. When it arrived, Lena shook her head immediately. I can't eat, she said. I need to go back soon. Victor looked at her firmly. You will eat, he said. Not because I'm rich. Because you deserve to. She stared at him. Something inside her broke quietly. She picked up the spoon and took a small bite. The warmth of the food hit her in a way she didn't expect. Her eyes filled instantly. Victor waited patiently. After a few moments, he spoke again. Tell me everything, he said softly. She kept her eyes on the table. I'm tired, she whispered. Her shoulders dropped. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay, she continued. Tired of waking up afraid. Tired of being invisible. Victor didn't interrupt. I tried to study again, she said, but I couldn't afford it. I tried better jobs, but they all wanted experience, connections. Her voice cracked. Or something else. Victor's eyes darkened slightly. I refused, she added quickly. Silence filled the room. Sometimes doing the right thing feels like punishment, she whispered. Victor leaned forward slightly. Lena, he said calmly. Your life is about to change. She shook her head immediately. Please don't promise, she said. People promise and disappear. Victor reached into his pocket. He placed something small on the table. Lena froze. It was a bracelet. Old, simple, worn. Her breath caught. That's mine, she whispered. Victor nodded. You gave it to me, he said. You said it would bring me luck. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I thought you lost it, she said. I kept it, he replied. Because it reminded me of you. Lena covered her mouth. For years, she thought she had been forgotten. But she hadn't. Not even for a second. Victor looked at her, his voice steady now. I'm going to change your life, he said. She blinked. But not with money, he added. She frowned slightly. Then how? Victor's eyes held something deeper now. I'm going to give you back what life took from you, he said. Her heart pounded. Dream, he continued. Your dignity, your future. She stared at him, unable to speak. Victor stood up, walked a few steps away, then turned back. You once helped me when you had nothing, he said. Now it's my turn. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. What do you want from me? Victor stepped closer again, lowering his voice. Nothing that will ever make you feel small, he said. He took out his phone and made a call. Yes, he said calmly. Open a full scholarship file. Immediate approval. Also prepare a position in the foundation. Entry-level training. Keep it private. He ended the call. Lena stared at him, frozen. What did you just do? She whispered. Victor looked at her. I just opened a door you thought was closed forever. Her hands trembled, her entire life changing in a single moment. But she didn't know yet that this was only the beginning, because Victor had something bigger planned. Something no one would expect. And when the world found out, it wouldn't just change Lena's life, it would shake the entire city. The words Victor had just spoken stayed in Lena's mind like something unreal, something too big to fit inside her understanding of life. For years, everything she knew had been small, limited, controlled by fear and survival. And now, in just a short moment, it felt like someone had quietly removed those limits without asking her permission. She sat still, her fingers trembling slightly on the table, her eyes fixed on the bracelet lying between them. Victor, she said slowly, her voice barely steady. "Why are you doing all this?" Victor didn't answer immediately. He pulled his chair slightly closer and sat down again, his posture calm but his eyes serious. "Because you didn't walk away when you could have," he said. Lena looked up at him, confused. "When we were kids," he continued, "you had every reason to ignore me. You were struggling too. You were hungry too. But you still shared what little you had." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Victor leaned back slightly, his gaze softening. "People think big changes come from big actions," he said quietly. "But sometimes they come from small moments. A piece of bread. A kind word. Someone believing in you when no one else does." Lena felt her chest tighten. "I never forgot that," he added. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. Not loud. Not dramatic, just quiet, like everything else in her life had been. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. Victor shook his head gently. "You did," he said. "You gave me something I didn't have back then, hope." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lena took a slow breath. "But what if I fail?" she asked. Victor didn't hesitate. "Then you try again," he said. She shook her head. "It's not that simple." "It is," he replied calmly. "It's just not easy." That answer stayed in the air between them. Lena looked down again, her mind racing. Fear, hope, doubt, all fighting inside her at once. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted. Victor gave a small nod. "That's why I'm not just opening a door," he said. "I'm walking with you through it." She looked up again, surprised. "You won't be alone this time," he added. Those words, they hit deeper than anything else. Not alone. For years, that was all she had known. Victor stood up slowly. "Come," he said. "There's one more place I want to show you." Lena hesitated, but only for a second. Then she stood up and followed him. They left the lounge and walked back outside. The car was already waiting. This time, Lena didn't hesitate as much when she stepped in. Something inside her had already begun to change. The car moved through the city again, but this time Lena wasn't just watching. She was thinking. About everything. About the past. About what Victor had said. About the future she had stopped imagining. "Victor," she said after a while. "What if I'm not the same person anymore?" He turned his head slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she struggled to explain, "life changed me. I'm not that girl anymore. The one who used to dream. The one who believed in things." Victor listened carefully. "Maybe that's true," he said. "But it doesn't mean she's gone." Lena frowned slightly. "Some parts of us don't disappear," he continued. "They just get buried." She looked at him, unsure. "And sometimes," he added, "they're just waiting for the right moment to come back." The car slowed down and stopped. Lena looked outside. It was a quiet street, cleaner than the areas she was used to. In front of them stood a modern building. Not too large, but clearly important. "What is this place?" she asked. Victor stepped out of the car and walked around to her side, opening the door. "You'll see," he said. Lena stepped out, her eyes scanning the building. It looked new, fresh, almost untouched. They walked toward the entrance together. Inside, everything was bright, organized, peaceful. A woman at the reception desk immediately stood up. "Good afternoon." "Hail," she said politely. Victor nodded. "Eyes everything ready?" "Yes, sir," she replied. Lena looked between them, confused. Victor turned to her. "This," he said, "as part of the foundation." She blinked. "Foundation," she repeated. Victor nodded. "We help people who didn't get the chances they deserved," he explained. Lena's heart started beating faster again. "People like me?" she asked quietly. Victor looked at her directly. "Exactly like you." They walked deeper inside. Rooms filled with desks, books, computers. A few people working quietly, some talking, some studying. Lena slowed her steps. "This place," she whispered, "it's beautiful." Victor watched her reaction carefully. "This is where your new journey begins," he said. She turned to him quickly. "My journey." Victor nodded. "You're going back to school," he said. Fully supported. No worries about money. No distractions. Lena felt dizzy for a second. "And the job?" she asked. Victor smiled slightly. "You'll train here," he said. "Learn, grow, build yourself again." Her eyes filled once more. "Victor, this is too much," she said. He shook his head. No, he replied. This is what should have happened years ago. She looked around again, her chest rising and falling quickly. Everything felt real, but also impossible. What if I can't do it? She asked again. Victor stepped closer. Then I'll remind you why you can, he said. She let out a small, shaky breath. For the first time in years, she felt something different. Not just hope, but possibility. They spent the next hour walking through the building. Victor showed her classrooms, training areas, quiet spaces for study. Every step felt like a step away from the life she had known. And yet fear still followed her. What about my past? She asked suddenly. Victor paused. What about it? He replied. What if people find out? She said. That I was washing dishes. That I was struggling. Victor's expression didn't change. There is nothing shameful about surviving, he said firmly. She looked at him. The only shame, he continued, is forgetting where you came from. Those words settled deeply in her mind. By the time they left the building, the sun was beginning to lower in the sky. The day had moved fast. Too fast. Victor, she said as they stood outside again, what happens now? He looked at her calmly. Now, he said, you go back and close your old chapter properly. She understood what he meant. Her job, her old life. The station. The next morning, Lena stood outside the small restaurant again. But this time, everything felt different. She walked inside slowly. The same noise, the same smell, the same people. But she was not the same. Her manager looked up, ready to shout something, but Lena spoke first. I'm resigning, she said calmly. The manager blinked, surprised. Switch yourself, he said after a moment. Plenty of people need this job. Lena nodded. I know, she replied. She turned around and walked out. No fear, no hesitation, no looking back. Victor was waiting outside. When she saw him, a small smile appeared on her face. It's done, she said. Victor nodded once. Good, he replied. He looked at her for a moment, then added quietly, now your real life begins. But what Lena didn't know yet was that Victor had one final plan. Something bigger than education, bigger than opportunity. Something that would not only change her life, but make the entire world see her. And when that moment came, no one would ever see Lena as invisible again. The days that followed did not feel real to Lena at first. Every morning, she woke up expecting to see the cracked ceiling of her old room, to hear the distant noise of the street, to feel that familiar weight of survival pressing down on her chest. But instead, she found herself in a quiet, clean space provided by the foundation, where the air felt lighter and the silence did not carry fear. The first few days were the hardest, not because of difficulty, but because of disbelief. She kept thinking it would disappear, that someone would come and tell her it was all a mistake, that she didn't belong there. On her first day at the foundation, she stood at the entrance longer than necessary. People walked past her, some greeting her kindly, others focused on their own work. No one looked at her with judgment. No one questioned her presence. Still, she hesitated. Victor noticed. He had arrived early, as he usually did, and when he saw her standing there, he walked toward her calmly. You're early, he said. Lena gave a small, nervous smile. I didn't want to be late. Victor nodded slightly. That's a good habit. She looked at the building again, then back at him. I still feel like I don't belong here, she admitted. Victor didn't dismiss her feeling. He understood it too well. That feeling doesn't go away overnight, he said. But it fades when you start building something for yourself. She took a slow breath. And if it doesn't? She asked. Victor looked at her directly. Then you remind yourself why you're here, he said. She nodded, though her doubt hadn't completely disappeared. Inside, her training began. At first, everything felt overwhelming. Books she hadn't touched in years. Computers she barely knew how to use. People speaking with confidence, moving with purpose. Lena felt small again. But this time, she didn't run. She stayed. Day by day, something slowly started changing. Her mind began to wake up again. The part of her that once loved learning, that once dreamed of teaching, that once believed in something more, it was still there. It had just been buried under years of struggle. Victor didn't interfere too much. He didn't hover over her or treat her differently. That was intentional. He wanted her to grow on her own. But he watched, always, sometimes from a distance, sometimes through reports, sometimes just by asking simple questions. How was today? He would ask. And at first her answers were short. Good. Fine. Hard. But slowly they changed. I learned something new today. I helped someone understand a lesson. I think I'm starting to get it. Each answer carried a little more confidence. Weeks turned into months. Lena changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but deeply. Her posture straightened. Her voice became steadier. Her eyes, they began to shine again. And one day, during a small group session, something happened that Victor had been waiting for. A young girl in the class was struggling with a lesson. Frustrated, confused, ready to give up. Lena watched her for a moment. Then, without thinking too much, she walked over. Let me help you, she said gently. The girl looked at her unsure. Lena sat beside her and began explaining. Not in complicated terms, not like a teacher trying to impress, but simply, kindly. The same way she used to teach kids at the station. The girl's expression slowly changed. Confusion turned into understanding, and then into a small smile. I get it, the girl said. Lena smiled back. And in that moment, she realized something. She hadn't lost herself. She had just been waiting to find her way back. Later that day, Victor called her into his office. She walked in calmly, though a small part of her still felt nervous around him. You wanted to see me, she asked. Victor nodded, gesturing for her to sit. I heard about what you did today, he said. Lena frowned slightly. What do you mean? The girl you helped, he said. You didn't have to step in. Lena shrugged lightly. She needed help, she said. That's all. Victor studied her for a moment. No, he said. That's not all. She looked at him, confused. That's who you are, he continued. You don't just survive. You help others survive too. Lena didn't know what to say to that. Victor leaned back slightly. You're progressing faster than expected, he added. She blinked. Really, Victor nodded. But that's not the reason I called you here, he said. Her heart beat a little faster. Then why? She asked. Victor paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because it's time for the next step, he said. Lena felt a mix of curiosity and fear. What next step? Victor stood up and walked toward the window, looking outside. For months now, he said, you've been rebuilding yourself, learning, growing, finding your strength again. He turned back to her. And you've done well, he added. She sat still, listening. But growth doesn't stop there, he continued. Lena swallowed. What are you saying? She asked. Victor walked back and placed a file on the table in front of her. Open it, he said. She hesitated for a second, then reached forward and opened the file. Her eyes moved across the pages. At first, she didn't understand. Then slowly, her expression changed. She whispered, This is a proposal, he said. For what? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Victor looked at her directly. For you, he said. Her heart pounded. I don't understand, she said. Victor sat down again. I'm expanding the foundation, he explained. Building a new center. She nodded slowly, still confused. And I want you to be part of it, he added. She blinked. Part of it how? Victor's voice remained calm. I want you to help run it, he said. Lena froze. What? She whispered. You've lived the life we're trying to change, he continued. You understand it better than anyone sitting in an office. Her mind raced. No, I can't, she said quickly. I'm not ready for that. Victor didn't argue. Maybe not yet, he said. But you will be. She shook her head. Victor, this is too much responsibility. And you think you're not capable? He asked. She didn't answer. Victor leaned forward slightly. Lena, he said quietly, you've already carried more weight in life than most people ever will. She looked at him, her eyes uncertain. This is not heavier than what you've already survived, he added. She stayed silent. Fear was there, but something else was there too. A small voice inside her, telling her this was possible. I'll train you, Victor said. Step by step. You won't be alone. She took a slow breath. Why me? She asked again. Victor gave a small, almost invisible smile. Because you didn't forget kindness when life gave you every reason to, he said. That answer settled deep inside her. Lena looked down at the file again. Then back at Victor. Her heart was still racing. But this time, it wasn't just fear. It was something stronger. "I'll try," she said softly. Victor nodded once. "That's all I need," he replied. And in that moment, another door opened. But what Lena didn't know yet was that Victor's final plan was still waiting. A plan that would take everything she had become and show it to the entire world. And when that moment arrived, there would be no turning back. Time moved forward, but for Lena, it no longer felt like something she was chasing just to survive. Now it felt like something she was walking with, step by step, building something that finally belonged to her. The training for her new role was not easy. Victor had made that very clear from the beginning. This is not a gift, he told her on the first day of her leadership training. It's a responsibility. Lena remembered those words every single day. She learned how the foundation worked from the inside, how decisions were made, how resources were managed, how every action could affect someone's life in ways she had once experienced herself. At first, she felt overwhelmed again. There were meetings, discussions, planning sessions. People asked her opinions, expected her to speak, to decide. The old Lana, the one who stayed quiet, who avoided attention, tried to come back. But this time she didn't let it take control. Instead, she listened carefully. She observed, she learned. And slowly she began to speak. At first, her voice was soft. Then clearer, then stronger. Victor watched all of this without interfering too much. He would sit quietly during meetings, letting her lead discussions even when she hesitated. Sometimes she would look at him, unsure, and he would simply nod. That small gesture, it gave her confidence. One afternoon, during an important planning meeting for the new center, something unexpected happened. A disagreement broke out. Two senior staff members argued about how resources should be used. One wanted to focus on infrastructure, the other on outreach programs. Their voices rose. The room became tense. Lena sat there listening. A few months ago, she would have stayed silent. But not now. She took a slow breath. "Can I say something?" she asked. The room quieted slightly. Victor didn't move. He just watched. Lena looked at both sides. "We're forgetting something important," she said. They looked at her. "We're not building this place for numbers or reports," she continued. "We're building it for people." Her voice was steady now. People like the ones who don't even know this place exists yet. People who are still out there, struggling like I was. Silence filled the room. "If we focus only on buildings, we lose them," she added. "If we focus only on outreach without structure, we can't support them properly." She paused for a second. "We need both," she said, "but we need to balance it based on real needs, not just plans." No one spoke immediately. Victor leaned back slightly, a small, almost invisible smile on his face. The discussion shifted. Calmer, more focused. And for the first time, Lena felt like she wasn't just part of the system. She was shaping it. Later that evening, Victor called her again. "You handled that well," he said. Lena shrugged lightly, though she felt something warm inside her. "I just said what I felt," she replied. "That's what leaders do," Victor said. She looked at him, unsure if she deserved that word. "Leaders don't just give orders," he continued. "They understand the people they serve." Lena didn't respond, but she remembered those words. Weeks passed. The new center began to take shape. Construction moved forward. Plans became reality. And Lena, she became stronger. Not perfect. Not fearless. But steady. One evening, as the sun was setting, Victor asked her to walk with him. They stepped outside the building and walked slowly along a quiet path. "You've changed," Victor said after a while. Lena gave a small smile. "So have you," she replied. Victor let out a quiet breath. "Not as much as you think," he said. She looked at him. "You still carry the same things," she added softly. Victor didn't deny it. Silence followed for a few steps. Then Lena spoke again. "Victor, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Why are you doing all this publicly now?" she asked. "You could have helped quietly. No one needed to know." Victor stopped walking. He looked ahead for a moment before answering. "Because stories matter," he said. She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Victor turned to her. People need to see that change is possible, he explained. Not just hear about it. Lena thought about that. If people only see success, he continued, they don't understand the struggle behind it. And if they don't understand the struggle, they don't believe they can rise. She nodded slowly. And you want them to see my story? She asked. Victor held her gaze. Yes, he said. If you're willing. Her heart beat faster. That means everyone will know, she said. Yes. She looked away, thinking. Her past, her struggles, her pain, all exposed. Fear returned. But it didn't stay alone. Because alongside it there was something else, pride. I'll do it, she said quietly. Victor nodded once. I knew you would, he replied. The day of the opening approached faster than Lena expected. Invitations were sent. Media was informed. People from different parts of the city began talking about it. A new education center. A foundation expanding, a story behind it. And Lena, she felt everything at once. Excitement, fear, nervousness. But she didn't step back. The morning of the event, she stood in front of a mirror. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. Not because of the clothes, not because of the setting, but because of the person she had become. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, the same one she had given Victor years ago. Now it was back with her. A reminder, a symbol, a full circle. Victor knocked lightly on the door. Are you ready? He asked. Lena took a deep breath. Then she nodded. Yes, she said. Outside, the station was filled with people. The same station, but a different moment. Cameras, banners, crowds, and a new building standing proudly nearby. Lena Hope Education Center. She looked at it from a distance. Her name, her story, her journey. All standing there in front of the world. Victor stood beside her. Today is yours, he said. She looked at him. Not mine, she replied softly. Ours. He smiled slightly. They walked forward together. The crowd grew quieter as they approached. People whispered. Cameras flashed. But Lena didn't look at them. She looked ahead. At the stage. At the moment waiting for her. At the life she never thought she would live. And as she stepped forward, she knew one thing for sure. This was not the end of her story. This was just the beginning. The moment Lena stepped onto the stage, everything seemed to slow down. The noise of the crowd faded into a distant hum. And for a brief second, all she could hear was her own heartbeat. It was loud. Heavy. Real. She stood there looking out at the crowd. Faces everywhere. Some curious, some emotional. Some simply watching. Trying to understand why this moment felt important. Just 2 years ago, she had stood only a few steps away from this same place, hidden behind a sink, washing dishes, hoping no one noticed her. Now everyone was looking at her. The contrast hit her deeply. Her fingers tightened slightly around the microphone as she took a slow breath. Victor stood to the side, watching quietly. Not stepping in, not guiding, just present. This was her moment. Lena closed her eyes for a brief second, and then she began. My name is Lena, she said, her voice soft at first, but clear enough to carry across the crowd. A quiet silence followed. 2 years ago, she continued, pausing slightly, I was standing right here in this station. But no one knew my name. The crowd listened closely. I worked in a small restaurant behind you, she said, her voice gaining a little strength. Washing dishes. Cleaning tables. Surviving one day at a time. A few murmurs spread through the audience. Lena swallowed, her grip on the microphone steadying. I was tired, she admitted. Tired of trying. Tired of hoping. Tired of pretending that everything was okay. But her words were simple. But they carried weight. Life had taken a lot from me, she continued. My family. My education. My dreams. She paused, her eyes moving briefly across the crowd before settling again. And, slowly, I started to believe that maybe this was all my life would ever be. The silence deepened. But then, she said softly, something happened that I never expected. Her eyes moved toward Victor. And someone I thought I had lost forever walked back into my life. All eyes followed her gaze. Victor remained still. Lena smiled slightly, emotion rising in her chest. He didn't see a dishwasher, she said. He didn't see someone who had failed. He saw me. Her voice trembled just a little, but she didn't stop. He didn't give me money and walk away, she added. He gave me something much more important. She took a breath. He gave me a second chance. The crowd remained silent, absorbed in her words. He gave me education, she continued. He gave me guidance. He gave me respect. Her voice grew stronger with each sentence. But most importantly, she said, he reminded me of who I used to be. Tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. And slowly, step by step, I found my way back. A soft wave of emotion passed through the crowd. Lena straightened slightly. This center, she said, gesturing behind her, is not just a building. It's a promise. Her voice carried more power now. A promise that no one is invisible. A promise that your past does not define your future. A promise that even when life takes everything from you, you can still rise again. Applause began. Softly at first. Lena paused, letting it settle. I stand here today, she continued, not as someone who was saved, but as someone who was given the chance to stand again. The applause grew louder. And I promise, she added, her voice firm now, that I will spend the rest of my life giving that same chance to others. The crowd erupted, clapping. Cheers. Emotion. Lena lowered the microphone slightly, her chest rising and falling as she took in the moment. Victor stepped forward then, but not to take the spotlight. He stood beside her. When the applause settled, he took the microphone. I built many things in my life, he said calmly. Companies, investments, systems. The crowd listened. But none of them matter as much as this. He added, he turned slightly toward Lena. Because this, he said, is not built on money. It's built on kindness. The audience reacted again. Years ago, Victor continued, when I had nothing, this woman shared what little she had with me. He placed a hand lightly over his chest. She believed in me when no one else did. He paused. And today, I simply returned that belief. Lena looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. Victor turned back to the crowd. Success means nothing if you forget where you came from, he said. And wealth is empty if it doesn't lift others. The crowd applauded again. Then Victor did something no one expected. He turned fully toward Lena. And that is why, he said clearly, Lena is not just part of this center. He paused. She is its director. The crowd gasped. Lena froze, her eyes widened, her breath catching. She turned to Victor, shaking her head slightly in disbelief. You didn't tell me, she whispered. Victor smiled gently. I wanted this moment to be yours, he said quietly. The applause returned, louder than before. Lena stood there overwhelmed. Director. The word echoed in her mind. 2 years ago, she was washing dishes. Today, she was leading something that would change lives. Tears finally fell from her eyes. But this time, they were not from pain. They were from something she had not felt in a long time. Joy. The ceremony continued, but for Lena, everything felt like a blur after that moment. When it ended, the crowd slowly began to leave. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft colors. The station grew quieter. Lena stood near the edge of the platform, looking at the trains moving in the distance. Victor walked up beside her. Do you remember? He asked softly. She smiled. You said you would leave this place one day, she replied. Victor nodded. And you said I would come back different, he added. She looked at him. And you did, she said. They stood there for a moment in silence. Then Lena spoke again. We didn't just leave, she said. We came back stronger. Victor smiled slightly. Yes, he said. We did. A train horn echoed in the distance. Life moving forward. But this time the station was no longer a place of struggle. It was a place of change, of second chances, of new beginnings. And Lena knew that somewhere out there someone else was standing where she once stood, tired, invisible, waiting. And now, she was the one who would find them, the one who would remind them, the one who would open the door, just like someone once did for her. The station grew quieter as the evening settled in, but Lena remained standing there, her eyes following the last train as it disappeared into the distance. The air felt different now, softer somehow, like the place itself had changed along with her. For years, this station had been a place of survival for her, a place where she hid her pain behind routine, where she learned to stay invisible just to get through the day. But now it felt like something else, a beginning. Victor stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. His posture relaxed in a way it rarely was. He wasn't thinking about business deals or meetings or numbers. For once, his mind was quiet. "You're thinking a lot," he said gently. Lena smiled slightly without looking at him. "I'm trying to understand how all of this is real," she replied. Victor nodded. "That feeling might stay for a while," he said. She finally turned to him. "And you?" she asked. "How does this feel for you?" Victor paused for a moment, considering the question. "It feels," he started, then stopped briefly. "Complete." Lena studied his face. "Complete," she repeated. Victor gave a small nod. For a long time, he said, "I kept moving forward. Building, achieving, growing. But there was always something unfinished." He looked around the station. "Something I left behind," he added quietly. Lena understood without him needing to explain further. "And now?" she asked. Victor looked at her. "Now I know I didn't leave it behind," he said. "I came back for it." A soft silence settled between them again. Lena let out a slow breath. "I used to hate this place," she admitted. "Every corner of it reminded me of what I lost." Victor didn't interrupt. "But now," she continued, her voice softer, "it reminds me of what I found." He smiled slightly. "That's the difference perspective makes," he said. She nodded. "And people," she added. Victor didn't deny it. A cool breeze passed through the station, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city settling into the night. "Victor," Lena said after a moment, "do you ever think about what would have happened if we didn't meet again?" He looked ahead for a second before answering. "Sometimes," he admitted. "And?" she asked. "I think," he said slowly, "I would have kept going, built more, earned more. But something inside me would have stayed empty." Lena listened carefully. "And you?" he asked in return. She took a moment before answering. "I think I would have kept surviving," she said. "Working. Struggling, trying not to think too much about what I lost." She paused. "And eventually," she added, "I would have stopped dreaming completely." Victor's expression tightened slightly. "I'm glad that didn't happen," he said. "Me too," she replied. They stood there for a few seconds more before Victor spoke again. "There's one more thing," he said. Lena looked at him, curious. "What is it?" Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He placed it in her hand. Lena looked down. It was a key. Not just any key, a new one. Polished. Simple. She frowned slightly. "What's this?" she asked. Victor's voice was calm. "Your new place," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "My place." Victor nodded. "It's not charity," he added quickly, knowing what she might think. "It's part of your role. You'll need a proper space to live, think, and work." Lena stared at the key for a moment. Her fingers closed around it slowly. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Victor shook his head gently. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just use it well." She nodded, her eyes slightly wet again. "Thank you," she said quietly. Victor didn't respond with words. He simply gave a small nod. They began walking toward the exit of the station. Each step felt lighter, not because life had suddenly become easy, but because it finally had direction. As they reached the outside, the city lights flickered on, painting everything in a soft glow. Cars moved, people passed, life continued. But for Lena, everything had changed. The next few weeks brought new challenges. Being a director was not simple. People came with expectations, problems, needs. Every decision she made mattered. At times, she doubted herself again. At times, she felt the old fear trying to return. But she didn't let it take over. Whenever it did, she remembered the station, the sink, the exhaustion, and how far she had come. Victor remained present, but never controlling. He guided when needed, stepped back when necessary. One evening, after a long day, Lena sat alone in her office. The building was quiet. She looked around the room. Clean desk, organized files, a window overlooking the city. It still felt unreal sometimes. Her eyes moved to the bracelet on her wrist, a small object, but it held everything. Her past, her connection to Victor, her reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. Not out of exhaustion, but out of peace. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She was ready for it. Outside, the city continued moving. Somewhere, someone was struggling. Somewhere, someone felt invisible. Just like she once did. But now, that story wouldn't end the same way. Because now, there was a place waiting for them. A door ready to open. A hand ready to lift them. And a woman who understood exactly what they were going through. Not because she read about it, but because she lived it. And as Lena opened her eyes again, a quiet determination filled her. This was not just her second chance. It was her responsibility. To make sure others got theirs too. Victor stood on the rooftop of his building that same night, looking out over the city. From up there, everything looked small. But he knew better. Every small story mattered. Every quiet struggle mattered. He thought about the boy he used to be. Hungry. Lost. Alone. And then he thought about Lena, the girl who changed that story. He let out a slow breath. Some debts, he murmured to himself, are not meant to be repaid but continued. And that's exactly what he had done. Not by giving back, but by passing it forward. The city lights stretched endlessly in front of him, and somewhere within those lights, new stories were already beginning.